morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim. Today we continue observing the trial of Christian and Faithful, Chapter 9, Part 7, The Judge's Counsel. Then the judge called to the jury, who were listening and observing all the while, "Gentlemen of the jury, you see this man about whom so great an uproar has been made in this town. You have also heard what these worthy gentlemen have testified against him, and you have heard his reply and confession. It lies in your hands whether to hang him or save his life. But I think it is fitting for me to give you some instruction in our law. A decree was made in the days of Pharaoh the Great, servant of our prince, that in order to prevent those of a contrary religion from multiplying and growing too strong for him, their males should be thrown into the river. A decree was made in the days of Nebuchadnezzar the Great, and other of his servants, that whoever would not fall down and worship his golden image should be thrown into a fiery furnace. Further, a decree was made in the days of Darius, stating that whoever called upon any god but him should be thrown into the lion's den. Now this rebel has broken the substance of these laws, not only in thought, which cannot be allowed, but also in word and deed, which is absolutely intolerable. Now Pharaoh's law was based on supposition of what might happen to prevent trouble, though no crime had yet been apparent. But in this case it is clear to all that a crime has been committed. He admittedly disputes and denies our religion. For the treason that he has confessed, he deserves to die. Chapter 9, Part 8. The jury returns a verdict. Then the jury went out to deliberate. Their names were Mr. Blindman, Mr. No Good, Mr. Mellis, Mr. Lovelust, Mr. Live Loose, Mr. Heady, Mr. High Mind, Mr. Enmity, Mr. Liar, Mr. Cruelty, Mr. Hate Light, and Mr. Implacable. All these expressed their opinions in the jury room, and then agreed to return a unanimous verdict of guilty. First, Mr. Blindman, the head juror, spoke and said, "I see clearly that this man is a heretic." Then Mr. No Good said, "Away with such a man from the earth." "Yes," said Mr. Mellis, "for I hate the very looks of him." Then Mr. Lovelust added, "I could never endure him." "Nor I," said Mr. Live Loose, "for he would always be condemning my ways." Hang him, demanded Mr. Heady. "He's a miserable bum," said Mr. High Mind. "My heart swells with anger against him," said Mr. Enmity. "He is a worthless person," said Mr. Liar. "Hanging is too good for him," snarled Mr. Cruelty. "Let's put him out of the way," suggested Mr. Hate Light. Then Mr. Implacable said, "If all the world were offered to me for reconciling with this man, I would be unable to. Therefore let us immediately recommend the death penalty." Chapter 9, Part 9. Faithful's Martyrdom and Departure. And so they did. Faithful was condemned to be put to death by the most cruel means that they could invent. Faithful, so brave in what you have done and said, judge, witnesses, and jury have instead of overcoming you only shown their rage. When they're dead, you'll live from age to age. So they brought him out to do with him according to their law. First they whipped and beat him, then they cut him with knives and swords. After that they stoned him with stones, and last of all they burned him to ashes at the stake. Thus Faithful came to the end of his earthly life. When I saw that behind the crowd stood a chariot driven by horses, waiting for Faithful, who as soon as his enemies had finished with him, was ushered inside, with the sound of a trumpet he was immediately carried up through the clouds, the nearest way to the celestial gate. As for Christian, he was given a temporary delay, and was ordered back to prison, where he remained for a time. But he who overrules all things, having power over their rage in his hand, made it possible for Christian to escape. After Christian had escaped, he went on his way, singing, "Well, Faithful, you have faithfully professed your Lord, by whom you will surely be blessed, when faithless ones with all their vain delights are crying out under their hellish plights. Sing, Faithful, sing, for your name will survive, for though they killed you, you are yet alive." And that's the end of Chapter 9. Next week we'll start Chapter 10 with Part 1, Hopeful Joins Christian. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.